So this is the 07:30 hours GMT edition of the Kudilar television channel being broadcast on the internet under the banner of the Baby Angel Geronimo Editions on Thursday, the 21st of September 2023. Of course, the newspapers are preoccupied with the partisan stupidity of backing Rishi the Sunk Sunak. Remember, we are the ones who call him Sunk Sunak. He was sunk even before he got into number 10 Downing Street, long before. Because Sunak was launched as one of Boris Johnson's stooges in 2016 in the run up to the so called Brexit. And I first noticed Sunak, sunk Sunak, as he appeared on the daily politics slot. And it was quite obvious that he was not a political, original thinker at all. He was a stooge. And the BBC program presented by the person, Joe something, wasn't really interrogating him, which is what lies behind what Yasmin Alibai C calls broken Britain. Well, of course, it's not Alibai C's conclusion or observation. It is the evidence that forces that conclusion. Now, this is the name that should have been used by the media long before. I've been thinking about it from the very beginning that it was Jimmy Savile, the evil Savile that the evil brand reminds of. So it's Savile that should have been there in the mentions, in the reference, in the context. So in today's Times, on page 7, they're saying Savile squad called in for brand case. And the BBC Director General, Tim Davie, admits doubts over whether the BBC did enough. Of course, it didn't do enough. And there is this piece about anyone can pose as a serious thinker. How can they? This is a piece on page 24, by James Marriott. Says anyone can pose as a serious thinker. And the next one is Starstruck. Lefty media gave Brand a free press, free pass. And Jenny Starner on page 24. And the BBC has been hypocritical. Leading article, page 27. And they're promoting Rishi Sunak. And there is on page 11, first time a heading to an item about the police murdering a black man in Britain. Because police have been murdering black man mainly. Well, they did attack and cause the deaths of black women as well, but the murders of black men have been more often, more frequent, more widespread. And apparently, Stephen Fry, who is, how can I put it? Stephen Fry is overhyped beyond endurance. This is not news. Whatever happened to Stephen Fry is not news, and yet it is treated as if more than news. And there is Juliet Samuel, and the piece is headed more accurately than any piece I have seen in the comments of the Times about Sunak has appeared. And this one is Sunak is closer to trust than he would like to think. Oh, that is the heading. I haven't yet read the copy, but that's the heading. As the heading is concerned, that is absolutely accurate. Both the Prime Minister and his predecessor failed to grasp the need for a muscular industrial policy and a larger role for government. We'll come to the description, the definition of the muscular later. And Janice Turner is saying in the notebook, star-struck lefty media gave Brand a free pass. Now, where do you begin to condemn this kind of stupidity? For a start, I never saw anything. Well, I would not see anything in any of these people to begin with. I didn't see anything that could remotely justify the use of the word star in the appearance of this evil person. The only thing I saw, the most prominent aspect of his appearance, the aspect that caught my eyes when I saw him on the platform of Channel 4 television of that prostitute program, the pimping program called Big Brother House. The first thing and the only thing and the lasting thing from that day, that was in 2006 or thereabouts, so maybe 2005, I can't be exact on that particular year, but that is when he was launched. And when I saw him, the way he sat on the sofa and looked around, he looked like really devil, a devilish face and appearance, and the eyes. Now that all of that remains unchanged to this day. So when these people in the Times, for example, describe him as in the past, let's say, having been a star, I mean, where did they find the evidence to call him a star? There is no evidence to call this evil individual a star. And when Janice Turner, that is the piece I'm talking about, says the lefties, I mean, who is she thinking of as being lefties? Who are the people that she thinks were the lefties? Most of my intellectual energy, most of my intellectual energy, if not all of it, is dedicated to identifying, looking for evidence, searching for evidence behind any particular observation or assertion or state of situation. And I physically came into the UK more than 50 years ago. And from my first encounter with the immigration desk, where I had to pass the immigration desk, I have found it very astonishing. The intellectual capacity or the level of intellect, the ability on the part of these people, let's say collectively British, is far lower than the hype would suggest. Because I had the row with this idiot. He wanted to see my passport, which I gave him. And when he was kind of looking at my passport and looking at me, he casually asked me, notice what he asked me. He asked me either about one parent or both my parents. He asked me if my parents were married. Really, he did. He's a white boy, and I snatched the passport from his hand with as much force as I could organize at that point at the desk at the counter. And I said, of course, my parents are married, unlike your parents who are not married necessarily. Now, that was a huge cultural shock. How could he even ask me that? In any case, my status on my passport and my entry clearance, whatever, had nothing to do with my parents being married or not. But the gulf that existed and exists and is widening between the immorality of the state of the United Kingdom and what is morally kind of acceptable was the one that actually hit me. And at that time, this is the benefit of reading newspapers, isn't it? I was already very familiar with the huge physical embarrassment in the name of the UK Lib Dems, well, the liberals at the time they were. And it was Cyril Smith, the shit. I knew him. I knew him when I was in Dhaka, in just become Bangladesh, and before that I was aware of him in Dhaka, in East Pakistan. And I was appalled by the acceptance of Cyril Smith, the shit, by the British public. Now remember, that was more than 50 years ago, well before, more than 50 years ago. And it was long time after that this criminal, well, after he passed away anyway, was exposed as a sex offender. But my knowledge of him was that he was a bastard, as we call it, because his parents weren't married and nobody knew who his father actually was. And I cannot recall this minute, but my encounter at the British immigration desk at Heathrow Airport was about my complete confident knowledge that Cyril Smith's parents were not married. And a more powerful rebuff could not be invented for this stupid, racist cunt, immigration passport check or whatever, the border, whatever it's called now. So I'm outraged at the persistent lowest common denominator level of intellect on the part of the British, well, decision makers, commentators, etc., etc. How can this piece in the Times use this term star about the evil Russell Brand? And who are the left? Because all the left that I have encountered, well, obviously, I mean, representative left of the Ken Livingston Livingston and the moron Jeremy Corbyn. The only person that matched any expectation was a rare one, was a member of the NUJ magazine branch, who was a part of my support, I mean, if you like. And he passed away too soon. Into the Guardian. Geoffrey Sheridan is the only one that actually had a sense of humor, which would only be available if somebody had the intellectual capacity to grasp an issue. And we had a few jokes as we sat gossiping. As I said, I mean, Geoffrey Sheridan had a genuine sense of humor and genuine grasp of things. And I think Geoffrey Sheridan was involved with the what used to be called the International Marxist Group that because Traitor Ali, Tariq Ali, has done more stand has been eagerly embraced disease in Britain for the utility, for the usefulness in the crusade narrative. The crusade narrative is more effective against Pakistan, and there is nothing comparable that can be used in relation to India post August 1947. There also carries the continuation of the coverage of the piece about Canada and the evilness, the murderer, Narendra Modi. The Times is giving Narendra Modi a space, saying that he is warning Indians to be wary of going to Canada or wary when they visit Canada. Let's check the actual headline, which is in the world section, that is the international section. Be wary of visiting Canada. So he's talking about be wary of visiting Canada, not just be wary when visiting Canada. Modi warns Indians that this is the continuation of the row between Trudeau and Modi over the murder. Was it in June this year or June last year? I'll check in a minute. Of a Sikh who is a Canadian national but was an activist campaigner for Khalistan, the independent state for Sikhs. by the West at all, despite Trudeau's opinion. Trudeau is pictured in this piece, or along with this piece, wearing an Indian dress. Justin Trudeau tied India to the killing of a Sikh separatist. Now, would they use the term separatist about, say, a supporter and from New Delhi, Amrit Dillon. Amrit Dillon, I think, is a one from Delhi, which is the second byline, and the top one is the Kiran Southern from a place called Surrey in British Columbia. We'll come to that in a second and see when this Sikh separatist was actually murdered in Canada. And the murder is being pinned by Trudeau on Modi's intelligence assassins. Modi's assassins operating in Canada. And it's not possible to describe the full extent of the immorality of the Western imperialist, post-imperial imperialism by just saying that they're hypocritical. They're not hypocritical. They're completely in criminal complicity with the forces against Muslims. Say, if a similar operation, similar to the one that Canada and Trudeau are complaining about in relation to Narendra Modi's Hindu fascist regime murdering a Sikh independence campaigner in Canada. If a similar, let's say, a Pakistani origin but Canadian citizen or Canadian national had been murdered in Canada by Pakistani kind of assassins, Pakistani state assassins operating in Canada in a clandestine operation. How would the Canadians treat the Pakistanis? And I'm continuing the kind of narrative based on the crusade that is anti-Muslim, not anti-Pakistan, because Pakistan is a recent country, but anti-Muslim crusade is not recent. The anti-Muslim crusade goes back more than 1,000 years. I don't think that they would have relegated the murder of this Sikh separatist to the back pages or the inside pages or as footnotes as they're doing this time. they would really declare literally war on Pakistan diplomatically. Not that they need to declare a war on Pakistan, but there is a state of war in terms of diplomacy against the state of Pakistan anyway, regardless of the internal political instabilities that continue in Pakistan at all times. The state of Pakistan, as I have maintained all along, has been more beneficial to the Western imperialists and warmongers than the state of India, because the people of Afghanistan, the largest number of Afghans have fled to Pakistan. And Pakistan has lost the largest number of Pakistanis in tackling the aftermath, the fallout of the Western imperialist interventions in Afghanistan. The, the comparison between Pakistan and Afghanistan as possible locations for Western imperialist imperialists would not have the facilities to operate as freely as they have been doing against Afghanistan. Why? For a start, the image of Afghanistan that the Western anti Muslims have cultivated are more and of the physical intervention and occupation of Afghanistan. Because the image of Afghanistan is of a radical, in their words, extremist Muslim society. Whereas the image of Pakistan is not anything like that. And there are other issues that distinguish kind of between the West and the political population in Pakistan is far closer than the situation could be cited in relation to Afghanistan and the West, because the West never had the kind of 190-year rule in Afghanistan that it had in the subcontinent, that includes Pakistan, of course, and the imposition of the language and Macaulay and all the other things. So Afghanistan, although it is next door physically to Pakistan, is a part of a different sphere, hemisphere, a different region. So when the criminals, George W. Bush and his British stooge, the criminal Tony Blair, mounted the murderous attack and occupation of Afghanistan, ordinary Afghans couldn't think of going anywhere except to Pakistan. Anything like the number of Afghans that went to Pakistan, they didn't compare with those that managed to go to Iran, and most certainly not to India. So the sacrifice that the Pakistanis have been forced to make in order to enable George W. Bush and Tony Blair to occupy Afghanistan in a murderous way following the occupation of Afghanistan by the Russians. The sacrifice is very, very significant, and the debt they owe to Pakistan is enormous. But it is the stupidity internally of the Pakistani politicians that has been the reason for the West not being held to account for the debt they have owed to Pakistan. Instead, the West has pilloried Pakistan's image, demonized the Pakistan image, and made Pakistan appear to the Western zombie populations as if Pakistan is as guilty as Afghanistan. Now, that assumption could not be more wrong. So, when he says that, Modi says, according to this heading in the Times, be wary of visiting Canada. Modi wants Indians. What is he being reported as doing here? Kieran Southern, Surrey, British Columbia, and Amrit Dillon in Delhi. India has urged its citizens to be wary of hate crimes when visiting Canada after it was reported that the Canadians or Canada had worked very closely with the US on intelligence linking Indian agents to the murder of a Sikh separatist. Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, disclosed this week that his country was investigating credible allegations connecting India to the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijja in British Columbia in June. That means June this year. Nijjar, a prominent supporter of Sikh separatist movement seeking a new homeland carved out of the state of Punjab, was shot dead outside a temple in Surrey, a city of 500,000 people between Vancouver and the US border. Delhi has denied it was involved, and there have been tit for tat exclusions of senior diplomats. A Canadian government source has said that the authorities had worked very closely with the US on the intelligence tying India to the killing, as well as on Monday's public disclosure. Canada will share its evidence in due course, the source told Reuters. Washington has said it supports Canada's investigation. We have been in close contact with our Canadian colleagues about this, a senior State Department official said. We think it's important there is a full and open investigation, and we would urge Indian government to cooperate. But the incident has worsened the rift between Canada and India, with Trudeau confronting Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, over the issue at the G20 summit this month. Trade talks between Ottawa and New Delhi have been halted, and Canada has called off a trade mission next month. Experts have said Trudeau must provide proof of the allegations. It's just something that he said is a credible allegation with no proof at all. Jasdeep Singh, a founder and chairman of the community group Sikhs of America, told an event hosted by Washington's Hudson Institute think tank. India has warned its citizens traveling to Canada to be wary of possibility of hate crimes against them due to the heightened tensions. Threats have targeted Indian diplomats and sections of the Indian community who oppose the anti India agenda. the foreign ministry said in a statement. So it's a this piece in the Times is based on the Indian foreign ministry narrative. This is not, although it's in the Times, but it's not in support as support of the Canadian agenda, if you like. So, what is happening in the relationship? When Satan Rushdie published his satanic verses in the late 1980s, the BBC Newsnight program had a, I think, regular commentator, a Canadian, who was given prominent space and prominent platforms by the BBC and consequently by other platforms in the United Kingdom media. I'll check on the name of that idiot. I mean, this is now nearly more than 30 years, nearly 40 years. So I'll have to get that name of the Canadian. But that Canadian was an integral part of the deep crusade against Muslims. Well, I've got the name of Conrad Black, but he was not the one that I'm talking about. This one is the internet is not very good, is it, in answering questions? This Canadian racist anti-Muslim shitbag is evading research, isn't he? And this cunt is not featuring in the list. Searching with various search terms, and this criminal boy is not appearing, but he is bound to appear. Hey, this fucking stupid website keeps coming up. And the image of this site under the that the English language internet platforms have constructed is that of almost as if he's a deity. Now, Satan Rushdie is the personification of evil, the original personification of evil, because what he did with the satanic verses was insert a lie in the text of the Holy Quran. How do you find the answer to the question? Looking for the names of the criminals who enthusiastically joined the brigade and attacked the Muslims for having the audacity to question Satan Rushdie and his alleged right to attack the Holy Quran. There is endless propaganda. So I'm not finding the name of this criminal just yet, but we shall come to that another time. Now, this one, Thursday's I newspaper on the front page, continuing this sinking of Rishi sunk. Well, the headline is Sunak's net zero election gamble. Green pledge U-turn sparks Tory fury. Now, this heading, in relation to the contents about the Conservatives reacting negatively about any announcement about the climate and environment, is very rare indeed. So, this shows that the Conservatives are kind of organizing their appearance, as is their I newspaper, for example, which is owned and controlled by the Daily Mail Group, because the I newspaper would not associate conservative opposition to the conservative leadership in the way that it is doing in this particular heading and this particular piece. Let's say the first part. Prime Minister ignites major industry backlash and conservative civil war over environment as he drops key pledge to ban new petrol and diesel cars in 2030, delaying policy to 2035. Climb down on net zero policies includes pushing back the phase out of gas boilers while increasing grants for heat pumps and ditching tougher energy efficiency rules for landlords. Sunak lays down election challenges. I'll read that again. Sunak lays down election challenge to Starmer, insisting UK can still reach net zero by 2050 with more pragmatic approach. And the last line here is Boris Johnson accuses Sunak of faltering on climate ambition as campaigner Zach Goldsmith calls for election. Now, Goldsmith has, of course, condemned Sunak more than once since he resigned from the token post as a minister. But Zach Goldsmith is also close to Boris Johnson. So the combination of Johnson and Zach Goldsmith is not an accident, is not based on evidence. It's based on an agenda between Goldsmith and Johnson to work together against Sunak. Now, this piece about this is a continuation of the subtle agenda to divert attention from the evilness of Russell Brand to the technicality that his evilness was really not evil but a consequence of the law being not tight enough about our relationship was lawful, but allowed to take place in age. There should be with people your own age. Alice, one of the women who has made allegations against Russell Brand, says she was groomed into pursuing a sexual relationship with him when she was 16 and he was in his early 30s. She claims that during this time, the comedian assaulted her. Brand denies all the allegations against him and says all of his relationships have been consensual. While Alice, not her real name, is accusing Russell Brand of how effective this change would be in practice. Now, this is a technicality and the diverting attention from the evilness of Russell Brand. And I'll tell you what I mean by evilness of Russell Brand. Because quite apart from that particular subtle difference, Brand has accepted, no, he has not accepted, he has boasted. He has repeatedly boasted of being very, very sexually promiscuous. Now, if somebody is as adamant as he has admitted he is at being sexually very promiscuous, then when the emotion between people taking part in any sexual activity is taken into account, the consent, whatever the age, the consent disappears. For example, in the later kind of disclosures published by the that Brand actually pursued a woman who felt that he was like a terminator. She was trying to flee from him and he was pursuing her. And he kept repeatedly saying that there should be no consent. Right by the street. Now that doesn't have any of consent whatsoever or of any awareness of any consent. He was behaving like a terminator. And what is a terminator? Let's see what she could be meaning when she said terminate. Well, the second definition in the dictionary entry on terminator says the dividing line between the light and dark part of a planetary body. And then there is the question, what does it mean to be called a terminator? The definitions of terminator: someone who exterminates, especially someone whose occupation is the extermination of troublesome rodents and insects. Synonymous: eradicator, exterminator, type of killer, slayer, someone who causes the death of a person or animal. Now that's what she was meaning, that he was a murderer. So if she felt that she was being pursued by a terminator, then it can only be imagined how she was feeling. There is no way that a terminator who was pursuing her in the way that she describes could be bothered about consent. So let's go back to the article on the Sun itself. Now the heading in the piece there: I fled Brand. Russell Brand stalked me down street demanding sex after I met him in bar. I felt like I was being hunted. Model claims. That is the item timed at updated at 22:48 UK time, which would be 21:48 on the 18th of September 2022. A former model told yesterday how Russell Brand trailed her through the streets demanding sex for what felt like a lifetime, adding, he's like the Terminator. You can't get rid of him. The woman said she was terrified as the former television host walked 5 paces behind her after following her out of a trendy wine bar before blurting out, let's just fuck right here. She started running to escape her husband, but he was already there. The word predator left absolutely spot on. The word predator is absolutely spot on. He was dead set on his goal. His intention was to have sex with someone, anyone. The woman was in her 20s when she met Brand in the bar below a restaurant popular with the rich and famous in Primrose Hill, north of Regent's Park in London. It was 2005, and he was then presenting Big Brother's Big Mouth on Channel 4 television. So there is no way that he was thinking of consent. He was thinking of conquest. She said, I saw him come down the stairs and he made a beeline for me. He was friendly, funny, and was going back and forth between me and others most of the night. It was quite a buzzy place back then. There were a lot of celebs and people would be getting up to all sorts. Everyone knew who he was. He was a bit lewd, but that was his thing at the time. It was part of his act. I'd made it clear I wasn't interested, but he'd been on my tail all night. At some point later on, I looked around and couldn't see him, so I thought it was a good time to leave. Now, pause there. This criminal, could not be more wrong, more dishonest, and more opposite to what he claims to have been consent. Consent would have been the last thing in his mind he was hiding. He disappeared from her sight so that she would feel safe to leave in the knowledge that he created that he had gone. As I went up the stairs, he appeared from nowhere as I left. As I went up the stairs, he appeared from nowhere as I left. I was trying to shake him off, telling him over and over I was going home. It is a gentle but polite way of saying, don't come with me. The woman who had been drinking decided to stroll the 30 minutes home, leaving her car where she had parked it. She said it was summertime, so I was happy to walk. But as I left, I noticed he started to follow me. That's when it got creepy. He was walking about 5 paces behind me. He was slurring his words and saying things along the lines of, let's go and fuck. I told him I wasn't interested, and he said, let's just fuck right here. She added, it was just stomach turning. I'm 5 foot 10 inches, so I'm not small, but he was quite a big guy, and it was one of the few times I was really scared. I definitely felt that in his head this was all a bit of fun, but it wasn't. I was so rattled by it that I started to run. I ran as fast as I could to get away from him. The, he crossed the line completely and made me feel totally unsafe. In that moment, I could have been anyone or anything. It was horrible. I only told close friends at the time. The woman, now in her 40s, watched Channel 4's Dispatches probe on Sunday and realized others had not been so lucky. She is now preparing to speak to police after they urged complainants to come forward in the wake of allegations of sexual assault against Brand going back to 2003, which the comic actor has denied. She said, I haven't really thought about this for years, but since these allegations have come to light, I have been unable to sleep. Where is he? consent in any of this? So we shall be talking about this evil Terminator rapist, because what he was doing was demanding sex at any cost, no matter what. She was opposing, rejecting, denying consent. Everything to do with consent, she was opposing. And he was pursuing her. So let's go to the what is the Sun saying about the evilness brand today? Well, they're celebrating Rishi Sang's climate denial. So that's the one they're celebrating. They're not doing anything major about brand. Not yet. I'm looking at page 8. Okay, they've got a piece on page they've got a piece on page 13 of the Sun today, and it says, Brand pinned me down and said, This is what you are here for? The woman claims Russell Brand pinned her down in his dressing room after telling her, This is what you are here for? His latest accuser, who does not want to be named, said he also had the glazed look seen by other alleged victims. So he was looking like a madman. His latest accuser. She told how she was 21 when she first met the comedian and actor after a show in 2008 at London's Soho Theatre. She went to another few weeks later in Chelsea when she and a pal were invited to an upstairs bar for drinks. The woman said, As I went in, I stumbled, spilling my entire drink onto Russell's leather trousers. I was so embarrassed, but he leaned onto me and said, Oh dear, I remember him helping me up, but he was so close to me, it was really leery. She said Brand, then 33, asked for her number and later sent requests for saucy photos. The woman recalled, Eventually, I sent him a picture in a bra and pajama shorts. After another gig in West London, two security guards led her and a friend upstairs. She said, I thought we were going to a bar. But when the door opened and I realized it was his dressing room, my heart sank and I felt nervous. Russell was sitting with his feet up, eating strawberries. He pointed at us and said, I want you and you I want you and you to get on the sofa. She said he then asked them to perform sex acts on each other, which they refused. She added he was really persistent, saying, Come on, you are here now. Go on, do it. You know you want to do it, and this is what you are here for now. Where is the consent? Where on earth is the consent? So the criminals who have been giving publicity to this evilness and saying that he should not be convicted, he has not been convicted on all the other things. And among the criminals making the apologies for the evil brands are, of course, Pierce Moron and the so called editor-in-chief at the Evening Standard now, Dylan Jones. Now, Dylan Jones was involved with the GQ magazine when Pierce Moron interviewed and promoted Russell Brand for the GQ. And in the piece that the Sun itself has published of Pierce Moron, kind of contradicting himself and kind of pleading, effectively what he's saying is echoing what Dylan Jones wrote in the Evening Standard itself a few days earlier, which is like it's an agreed line that they are pursuing. Dylan Jones and Piers Morgan saying the same thing, that people shouldn't be condemning Russell Brand. Yet, why not? What is there to wait for? Well, there is a completely different topic that I'm going to move on to, which is about a cat. A scaredy cat at the Royal Mail threatened to stop delivering to a house amid fears a puss was attacking posties through the letterbox. But baffled owners of 3-year-old Arnie claim he just loves playing and is a threat to nobody. Lee Haynes and Joe Woodley have now had to install an exterior box after receiving a warning letter from the Royal Mail. School site worker Lee 44 said, "It's hilarious. He's such a placid cat, and this is like he's got some kind of asbo. They've sent the letter all the way from Plymouth. Instead of just sticking a note on the door, Arnie is not being malicious." He said Arnie lages around all day until the post arrives and he springs into action. Lee of Tamworth, Staffordshire, went on, "He is there like a lightning bolt. His paw comes through the letterbox to try to grab whatever there is, but maybe he's accidentally grabbing the postman's fingers. He doesn't use his claws, just his paw pads." The letter warned, "We are experiencing difficulties in delivering mail to your address because of the actions of a cat at your property. Your cat is behind the letterbox clawing at mail and fingers." Lee and admin worker Joe 45 below were told they had 14 days to take action, or it may be necessary to suspend deliveries. So they bought a £30 external mailbox, which has left Arnie very disappointed. The Royal Mail said, "We do place the highest priority on the safety of our employees." So that's the item about Arnie. Now, going back to the description of the Yorkshire Ripper, In the context of Russell Brand, how do you compare the Yorkshire Ripper and Russell Brand? Here is a piece on pages 20, 28 and 29. This is a two-page spread, and the main heading is on the top: Marcella Claxton, who escaped the Yorkshire Ripper on television drama. Peter Sutcliffe ruined my life, but if police had listened to me, there would have been no more killing. 11 more women were murdered after she was attacked. Now think about that. I mean, I'm surprised that in the reports that they published on the dispatches and Sunday Times and the Times later, nobody is talking about Russell Brand physically threatening anyone with any physical violence in the way that all these signs suggest he is violent, but they are not connecting these dots. And I think that it is a mystery that there is no case yet. Nobody has come forward yet that Russell Brand actually did anything more violent than what has been described in the stories that have been referred to so far. Recalling the terrifying moment she was attacked by the Yorkshire Ripper, Marcella Claxton's hand goes to her head as pain shoots across her scalp. This is a piece by Robin Perry and it is described as exclusive. The mental anguish of the near fatal assault has never left her, but it is the physical agony which is a constant reminder. It's a two-page spread, so quite a substantial space given by the Sun. The attack was in 1976. So the attack was in 1976. 86 is 10 years. 96 is 20 years. 2006 is 30 years. Now, it was 30 years since that attack that Brand began his attacks on the particular kind of victims that have been featured in the dispatches program in the Sunday Times joint investigation. The mental anguish of the near fatal assault has never left her, but it is the physical agony which is constant reminder. Over the decades, her torment has been compounded by the fact cops would not listen as she desperately tried to point them to her attacker, leaving him free to go on murder. 11 more. So I'll read that paragraph again. Over the decades, her torment has been compounded by the fact cops would not listen as she desperately tried to point them to her attacker, leaving him free to go on to murder 11 more women, having previously killed two. Today, nearly 50 years after serial killer Peter Sutcliffe hit her over the head with a heavy spanner, Marcella still suffers crippling daily headaches. She also has blackouts, which have led to falls that landed her in hospital and forced her to quit her job. ITB's gripping drama, The Long Shadow, which centers on her on the hunt for Sutcliffe, begins on Monday. But today, retired cleaner Marcella, 67, describes the real life torment that his surviving victims have to endure. She said, Peter Sutcliffe ruined my life. I can never escape what he did to me. I suffer pain every day exactly where he hit me. I have headaches and blackouts, daily reminders of what happened. The pain is really sharp. It goes all along the top of my head, from the front of the back. The pain is really sharp. It goes all along the top of my head, from the front to the back. Sometimes it feels like my head is going to burst open. One time it was that bad I put my head in the freezer. Sutcliffe's Sutcliffe had already murdered two women and attacked at least four others when he spotted Marcella as he scoured the streets of Chapeltown, Leeds in May 1976 for his next victim. Now a mom of three with six grandchildren, she was on her way home from a party when a driver pulled up and asked if she wanted a lift. Obvious to his murderous intent, Marcella accepted the offer, revealing, "I obviously had no idea it was the Yorkshire Ripper, otherwise I wouldn't have got in. All I saw was a white man with black hair and hard and beard and dark eyes. I thought I'd die. His eyes made him look a bit scary, but I got in. Quite soon I realized we weren't heading towards my home. He was driving me towards Roundhay Park in Leeds. I was getting more and more scared about what was going to happen, as I knew two women had been murdered close by. I tried to open the doors to get out, but I couldn't. When Sutcliffe parked up, frightened Marcella told him that she needed to go to the toilet. But as she walked over to a bush and crouched down, Sutcliffe opened his boot and took hold of a weapon. She recalled, "I was bursting, but when I bent down, he hit me over the head with a spanner. The pain was awful, and there was blood everywhere. I thought I was going to die, and he drove away, leaving me for dead. It was deserted. There was no one on the street to help me," etc., etc. Now, imagine this woman that Russell Brand pursued in Primrose Hill. He could have done the same thing to this woman that Marcella had suffered from Peter Sutcliffe. So, why are they not talking about Brand being a violent threat, in addition to being a violent rapist, that he's a threat as well in that way? We shall be talking more about all of these questions and continuing. Let's check what. I think this is 1 hour 24 minutes, and we shall end this particular edition here. And we shall continue in other editions.